Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Doug Vermeeren, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Personal Power Mastery. Over the last 2 decades, Doug has conducted extensive firsthand research into the lives of the world's top achievers. He has the success strategies of top business leaders from Nike to Reebok, FedEx, KFC, United Airlines, Microsoft, and Disney, among many others. So let's welcome to the show, Doug Vermeeren.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here, and I'm so excited we get to talk about your new book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're going to have some fun.
Well, it sounds like it's making massive changes in the lives of others, and so I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I guess it's kind of an interesting story because I didn't come up with these ideas and so forth in the book by myself. In fact, I was kind of raised in a family that really we didn't have any exposure to personal development. I'd never heard of such a thing in my life, in fact. And when I was in college, I took a job selling pest control door-to-door in California, and for any of your listeners that have done door-to-door, we know that that can be discouraging at times. Mm-hmm. And so I was honestly just about to quit. I was thinking, this is it. I'm not interested to do this anymore. And in this really discouraged state, I had a friend of our family's actually give me 2 books. And one of them was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The other was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And for those of you who are familiar with Think and Grow Rich, you'll remember that Napoleon Hill wrote that book after conducting research with more than 400 of the world's top achievers in his day, people like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, the Rockefellers, the Wrigleys, the Wright brothers, and many others. And when I read that book, I was actually really drawn to the idea that I wanted to go out and learn from some of the world's top achievers. And so I started to interview them. And here we are several decades later, actually, I interviewed more than 400 of the world's top achievers in our day, people who would be the founders of FedEx, Nike, Reebok, the Adidas Group, Christian Dior, people involved with Disney, Nike, all these massive companies, as well as some of the world's top athletes and celebrities and so forth. And so, over the last several decades, I've been compiling the patterns, the commonalities, the things that were the same amongst these 400 top achievers. And I've been teaching them in a seminar called Personal Power Mastery. And kind of what I want to do is I wanted to beta test this stuff before I brought it out in a book or brought it, to a larger scale in the public to make sure that I could legitimately get results for people and help them achieve what they wanted. And so that's kind of the genesis of this book. We've been testing these materials for a long time, and it's kind of cool because now we've recently been rated as one of the top seminars in the world, very comparable to Tony Robbins' UPW or some of the other big, massive, life-changing events that people attend. So we're very excited about that.
Well, hey, congratulations, because I know that is a feat, and it's something that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it can, but it's something that really takes perseverance to get to that point.
It definitely does. And like I said, I can't really take all the blame personally for it because, again, these are the strategies that more than 400 of the world's top achievers have been using. And so I guess I kind of think of myself more as a conduit. I went out and I found what those real patterns of success were, the way that those successful people thought, and the way that they did things. And now I just share with you what I learned amongst those people, like what were the common denominators. And that's really the essence of this program.
Well, in your book, you have all sorts of power thoughts that are just kind of peppered throughout this book, which I found to be fabulous. And one that really kind of stuck with me is focus on what you can influence. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I think a lot of times people give their power away by saying that, listen, if only, the marketplace would change, I'd have more customers and my business would be better. Or if only that person would change, my relationships would be more improved. Or if only this, if only that, and one thing or another. The truth of the matter is you have no influence over a lot of these external factors. And to spend energy and time griping about them and wishing something was better and wanting something to be better really won't serve you in any way. And so if we can start by what we can really have influence over, if we focus on those things, we find that very quickly we can start to change our situation. In fact, one of the quotes that goes with that I personally enjoyed is if you own it, you can change it. And I think that that's a really big thing that a lot of people miss is that they're always focusing on the things that are external. But we've got to own what's happening in our life. And we've got to recognize that the minute that we claim power, meaning that we say we can do something about that or that we will do something about it, is the moment that we actually begin to see change take place.
I could see why that's called a power thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is very powerful, and it is kind of a paradigm shifter when people really stop and think about it. It's like, ooh, if I own that stuff, then I can totally make a pivot and 180 change this, no problem.
Well, you know what? While we're on that subject, I mean, we could go really, really deep into this because in the seminar we talk about something called the willingness continuum. And we touch on it in the book as well, but it really focuses on this idea of not only just owning things, but to the quality in which we own them. I know that sounds kind of weird, like the quality in which you own something. Normally people say either I'm going to take ownership or I'm not. But the truth of the matter is there is a, let's call it that continuum of willingness, where at one end, let's use this example. You've got a teenage kid at home and you say, go clean your room. Well, he may clean his room, but he may not do it with, a happy heart, right? He'll hold back. He'll do it grudgingly. And if we look, that's at the very negative side of the willingness continuum. And the willingness continuum at that negative end is where all the lack of rewards is, all the scarcity is. There's less opportunities there. There's less payment there. There's less quality of relationship there. When we kind of do something, even though we know we need to do it and we hold back, we don't get the same rewards as someone who's at the other end of the willingness continuum, which is somebody that if you give them a task, they jump to it and they're very excited to get involved. And when they do something, we know that it's always done with excellence at a high quality of work. Now, there's even a higher level of excellence than that, and we often talk about that as going the extra mile. People who do things without being asked, they continue to move forward and go beyond the mark. And obviously, there's even more rewards there. That's where people get, promotions and are paid more and more opportunities and more freedom, and they're trusted with more opportunities. But did you know there's even one level even beyond that? And that's people who don't just go the extra mile, but they anticipate needs before they are expressed. And that's where we really see people at a high level of achievement. So one of the choices we have when we say that, what we focus on we can influence, and if we own it, we can change it, is to what quality of level will we own it? Are we just going to simply say, yeah, you caught me, I guess I have to do it? Or will we really just seek to really solve problems and create excellence wherever we go, even before it's expressed? And those are the people that are going to, honestly, quite frankly, move ahead faster with everything that they're ever attempting to do.
Now, in your experience, have you found that your new book, Personal Power Mastery, it's not just for people in business, but for everyone?
It is. It is for everyone. And what I'm finding is, especially in today's world, our economy, our marketplace, if you will, those that are involved in business or even in a corporate setting, there's no guarantee that they're going to be there forever. In fact, recent statistics have demonstrated that the average adult right now or individual leaving college or university will have up to 7 or 8 even occupations or jobs in their lifetime. And that's not necessarily even including those that are entrepreneurial, who own their own business or are looking to start their own business. So I believe this book is for everyone because we're all going to go through those life shifts. But one of the things that I think is even more interesting is we found that, how should we say, success, whether it's corporate or finance or whatever you're looking to do, actually really starts even much more basic than that. Like, so if I were to ask people to give me a list of your top 10 goals, most people will list things that they either want to have or things that they want to do. Now, that's great, right? Like, I want to travel, I want to have more money, I want to have nicer cars, I want to have better relationships, I want to lose weight, whatever those things are, right? But what most people neglect is, in order to get to the do and the have, in other words, to do the right things, to get the right things, we have to start by being the right thing. And if we expand who we are, we can expand what we have. And most people don't recognize that, and this is where Personal Power Mastery, the book, I think is very helpful for people, is that everything that we have in life is first built on the foundation of who we are. You've probably heard it said that actions speak louder than words. Well, the truth of the matter is being speaks even louder than action. And so when we can start to be the right thing, we'll find that we automatically start to do the right things, and we get to have the right things. And the cool thing is when we start with that foundation, everything that we begin to gain is in harmony with our truest authentic self and our highest values. I love what Stephen Covey once said. He said, most people climb the ladder of success only to find that it's been leaning against the wrong wall. And I think that that's really a symptom of that they've proceeded based on what they assume the world wants or what other people want in terms of success, rather than dialing definitely into their truest version of what success looks like. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that personal power mastery helps with. And by the way, I know I'm probably answering this question in a long, long way, but I've found that some of the most beneficial results that we've seen from people coming through were not business at all. We've actually had people come through who've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, people that have lost a loved one. In fact, I recently had a lady that lost a loved one in military action. We've had people who've come through who've been through personal bankruptcy or business bankruptcy. We've had people who've been through situations where their home has been foreclosed. And we find that a lot of these people who are in these difficult circumstances, who oftentimes are paralyzed by what's going on in their life in a negative way, actually find a ton of power in personal power mastery, and they're able to make shifts that are just incredible. And so, that's, in my opinion, that's really who it's for.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time to explain that, because I think it's important. A lot of times when people see books, like this, you're thinking, oh, that's for people who are in networking or sales or business, and it doesn't really apply to me. But it's really about life changes.
Yes, it is. Definitely true. And, it's interesting, too, that as I've seen this, is that all of us have things that we want to change and improve. I mean, Socrates once said that we are teleological beings, meaning that we get our sense of value and happiness from the progress that we make. And so if ever we're in a stagnant situation, we don't know what to do and we don't know how to proceed, oftentimes the biggest source of power that we can regain back is to simply recognize that we can make change, that we can make progress, that we're not consigned to be exactly who we were yesterday, tomorrow.
That's very encouraging. But it's interesting, though, because when we talk about change, a lot of people feel like, I don't know if I like that. I'm kind of comfortable in my little box here. But, you really talk about change as being a very positive thing.
Change is a positive thing. And in fact, if you think about it, the universe since the Big Bang has always been expanding and growing, right? And any time that we resist change, we're technically resisting growth and change. We're actually fighting against the entire universe. And the more that we resist change, the more that we will technically become obsolete. In fact, it's really easy to look at the world around us and recognize that it's changing at a lightning fast pace. You can either be a Netflix or a Blockbuster video. And if you resist change, one of you is not going to make it. And I think we know what happened to Blockbuster. And so I think it's important that we recognize that, really everything around us is built for us to grow. And so if we'll embrace change, we will be able to be strong. Now, I do want to suggest one thing that I think we need to be careful of is I do hear a lot of gurus saying that, to become successful in anything, we've got to step outside our comfort zone. And I'm going to tell you that even me personally, there's a lot of things in life I'm not comfortable with. For example, you'll never, ever catch me doing my own dental work, right? It will never happen. I'm not comfortable with that. And so it's important that we recognize that the true top achievers, when I interviewed the 400 of the world's top achievers, they didn't get uncomfortable with 1,000,001 things. They didn't look for ways to stretch beyond where they were, let's call it, in their brilliance zone. They recognized, just like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that 20% of their activities gave them 80% of their results. So they didn't try to be uncomfortable in that crazy 80%. They tried to actually find the 20 of the 20 of the 20, the best of their best of their best. And that's where they chose to become uncomfortable. And so I think it's important to just really look at that idea of let's become uncomfortable within our brilliance zone. Don't try to step outside of your comfort zone into no man's land and develop something that's not going to produce for you. Let's make life valuable because we're just here for a very short period of time, right?
Oh my gosh. And I think that I'm so glad you touched on the point of value, because most people, especially when we look at millennials, they're actually, it seems like in many ways, are driving this. That value has to have, value and purpose has to be present for fulfillment to happen. and I think a lot of people are looking for that type of value in their life.
Well, value and purpose, I love that you've talked about that here, because this is a really cool discussion that not a lot of people are prepared to go down. I learned some interesting things as I was interviewing the 400 top achievers, but I've learned even more as I've now taught this stuff to other people. And it's not uncommon for me to have people attend our seminars. They come in the door and they say, I can't find my purpose. What's my passion, right? And I guess, first of all, the word passion, it's hilarious. I was having a discussion with John DeMartini from The Secret. He's one of my best friends. One time we were talking about this idea of passion, and it's actually an incorrect word. Passion, if you think about it, like Passion of the Christ, passion actually means what you're willing to suffer for. And so, do you love something enough that you're going to suffer for it? But here's really the point of the discussion I want to make, is that most people, the reason why they can't find their passion or their purpose is because they're looking for it by themselves. And what I mean by that is they're asking the wrong questions. They're saying, what do I love? What am I super passionate about? And the truth of the matter is we as human beings, we're actually interconnected. We're a social community. We're connected to other people. And if we're looking just for what lights us up, what gets us excited by ourselves, we're going to find that we're soon alone. No one will support you in that. Instead, when you're looking for your passion and purpose, you've got to ask the question, what do I love and what do I do well that there's other people that also will benefit and that they love it and they will profit from it? And when we can find our passion and profit, or our passion and purpose rather, overlaps the passion and purpose of other people, where that synergistic connection is, that's where we're going to find value, because not only will we now be doing the things that we love, but we'll be surrounded by a community or a tribe that gets our vibe, who can validate what we do, and they'll pay for it. And so that also allows us to be compensated. And so I think it's so important that if we're looking for our passion and purpose, we don't neglect that it needs to connect to other people. It can't just be a selfish kind of expedition to find what fulfills us. We need to do it as a group.
Well, and how important is that? Because you're right. When people look at that, a lot of times they're like, well, I need to feel fulfilled, so what's that all about? And if I find my passion and purpose, I'll be able to do that. But when you do it, as you're explaining, without, it can't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah, and you'll never be fulfilled if you're trying to do it by yourself, by the way. You'll never, because part of human fulfillment is the feel of value and intrinsic worth to those around us, especially our loved ones. And that's why a mother often will do more for others than she will do for herself. And I'm not saying only mothers, but that's a prime example, where often mothers will bend over backwards and even sacrificing their own health to make sure that their babies are taken care of. This is just the way that we are as humans, and so you will never be fully fulfilled unless your mission actually has purpose to those that you care about most. And that's why it's so important that, like I say, people who come to us in Personal Power Mastery, if they get our vibe, they'll become our tribe. And that's where my purpose is fulfilled, is I find people that, really dial into what we're doing and they find value about it. Like, here's the deal, folks. Money comes and goes. Just doing something to get paid, it actually will never, ever fulfill you. You'll be a bottomless pit. But if you do something that is going to provide value and people validate that and they feel value in it and they expand from it and you get paid, you'll find that there's far more purpose there. You'll find that you'll be fulfilled.
Yeah. Well, and what a great discussion that is on that. In your book, Personal Power Mastery, you really cover so much. There's so much information here. You talk also about habits. And gosh, we're at the beginning of the year. Everyone's like, hey, yeah, let's do our New Year's resolutions. I can't wait. That lasts 30 days. If that. So, well, why don't you share with us a little bit of what you feel developing positive habits are all about?
Well, I think one of the first things that most people need to just be gentle with themselves on is to recognize that most of their habits actually do serve them right now. And I think a lot of times when people look at success, they feel like, oh, shoot, I've got to do a total overhaul of my life. And that means I've got to become somebody that I really am not, and so forth. And the truth of the matter is that's not true. Oftentimes, it's not the big things that need changing. It's often little things that are creating challenges for us in our life and little things that are taking us from our greatest successes. In fact, after having done this now for, close to 20 years, doing the interviews with top achievers, but also training people on how to do this, I found that most people are a lot closer to their goals than they ever realized possible. And I'm talking about their truest, most valuable, authentic goals. When you find something that's truly valuable to you, you often will take the steps to get there more than something that is an artificial goal, right? So I think the problem isn't even really the habit. It really is two things. One, it's the willingness. Okay, so in other words, they're not always willing to do the work. It's just so easy to kind of flow into this, default mode day to day. And then second is to have the particular strategies and tools to get there. And I think that all of that comes together once we get some clarity around what we want. I always say that a goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. And it kind of reminds me of that fortune cookie that we've all read that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. I've never liked that. I've never, ever liked that. And the reason why simply, is it sounds like a 1,000-mile journey. That means you're lost in the desert, right? Like, we don't want to do that. Yeah. Instead, if I were to rewrite that quote, I would simply say the journey to where you want to get to begins with a single footstep in the right direction. And I think that when we look at that, we would see that a lot of the things that we are doing habitually are actually not bad. There's a few tweaks that we can do here and there that will start giving us the opportunity to have more power in our life. And I think that that's one of the big things with personal power mastery is I can show you very clearly, step by step, what the top achievers do to get to their goals. And it's so funny, but it surprises me every time how people are astounded at how little these changes really are, right? It's these little changes that will make the massive differences for you in the end.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes I would get that cookie and go, is this the misfortune cookie? Come on, You create our own fortune. True. Yeah. So, and in your book, you also talk about stupidity versus persistence. And
actually, I use the word tenacity sometimes. Yeah, stupidity versus tenacity is what I often say, but persistence, it's the same as tenacity. Sorry, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, well, I'd love for you to expand on that because that one actually had me laughing a little bit,
It gets everybody laughing. And, I guess even the way that idea and that concept developed is kind of funny. And I don't always tell this story, but maybe I should. And when I tell it now for you, I don't want you to just understand it in the context of money, although that's how I learned it. So here's kind of what happened is when I was a young man, again, just starting out doing my interviews with the top achievers, I had this idea that I wanted to create a business. And so I took a business plan to one of my mentors who at the time was a billionaire. So this is a billionaire with a B, not a millionaire. I want to be clear. Mm-hmm. So here I am as a 19-year-old kid, and if we ever remember back to when we were 19, we were pretty smart. We had lots of answers. We knew all kinds of stuff. And so when I met with this fella who was a billionaire and showed him my business plan and asked for his advice, he started looking at it with me, and he stopped and he would point something out in the business plan and say, well, this isn't a clever idea, but maybe it will work better if you try this. Well, immediately my ego kicked in, and I started to tell him, no, this is why I'm doing this. You don't get it. This is what I got to do, and this is why. Well, rich people are often very humble and patient, so he kind of nodded and said, all right. Next thing you know, a few lines later, he's saying, oh, this is an interesting concept. I can see why you're doing this, but let me suggest maybe this. Well, again, I was like, oh, no. You don't get it. You don't understand what I'm doing here. This is what I'm trying to do. So in other words, I started trying to teach a billionaire what to do. And very soon into this discussion, he simply put up his hand and he said, you know what? You can be rich or you can be right. You can't be both. And he began to explain that the reason why most people are broke is because they are more content to be right. And they would rather hang on to their ego and they would rather stay where they are. And he continued to say that if you choose to be right and to hang on to your ego, well, the interesting news is you get to keep everything you've already got. Your next 2 years will look exactly like your last 2 years. And that really got me thinking. And then he said something kind of bold, and maybe at the time it was harsh. He said, I'm going to tell you this. He says, your bank account is certainly not near where my bank account is. And a bank account is often a report card of how well you understand certain concepts in life. Like this idea of working smarter, not harder. Your bank account is a statement of how well you understand that concept. And so he said, today you are faced with a choice. You can be rich or you can be right. And if you want to be rich, all you got to do is listen to me. And it was very interesting. So I made a decision at that moment that I would be teachable. And thank goodness I did, because, in a very short time after that, about 6 months, I did $1.6 million. It's about $9,000 a day just by shutting up and listening. Now, here's the difference between stupidity and tenacity. Stupidity is a guy who wants to get into the room beside him, and he just simply knocks his head on the wall. Bang, 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 hoping to get into the next room. Bang, bang, bang. And he keeps doing that forever and ever and ever. Well, tenacity is somebody who will bang his head once in that spot, bang, he'll realize it didn't work, and he'll now pick a new spot to bang his head in. And he'll keep doing that through the whole room until he either finds a window or a door, or maybe even more importantly, somebody else comes along and says, by the way, there's a window or door over here. So in other words, stupidity is not being teachable. It's hanging onto our ego, thinking we know what's right. Tenacity is being teachable, and when somebody comes with an answer, we are prepared to give it a try. And we'll keep trying new approaches until we find out a way to accomplish what we really want to do. And so I think that that's one of the biggest lessons that anyone can learn, is to just be teachable.
Yeah, do you know that teachable part is such a big thing, and I've gone through it myself, and it's just that willingness to, you talk about let ego just kind of fall away, but just to hear another point of view, and that's when you start realizing, you know what, maybe somebody else has something of value to offer, and it's not all about my perspective.
Well, someone always has something valuable to offer. And the thing that's kind of interesting about this, too, and I tell this to my students, because there's, 5 key pillar areas in our life that we always want to improve, and that's our self, our spirituality, our health, our relationships, and our abundance. And, the book talks a lot more about that in detail, but the one thing that I think is important to point out is that I actually acquire mentors in each one of those areas of my life. So, for example, the person that teaches me about finance, every Friday, I have a meeting with a fellow that's worth about $800 million. We do lunch, and we talk about some of the business ideas that I'm pursuing and things that I'm trying to develop. But he is not the guy that I talk to about, for example, my relationships, right? I have someone else who is very in tune to creating powerful relationships. Now, keeping in mind, some of this overlaps, and there'll be different things that each person shares that might be valuable. But I find that, quite frankly, having a mentor in each of those success areas of my life, a specialist, so to speak, has really been powerful for me. And so I encourage, the listeners to consider that.
Well, yeah, because, the only way you're going to get outside of the thinking that you currently have is by, it takes time, you have somebody that helps and coaches you, you have programs that you do, books such as yours, Personal Power Mastery, that people can pick up and start making those changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, where can our listeners connect with you and not only learn about your book, but more about the work that you do as well?
Yeah. Well, probably the easiest place is personalpowermastery.co. That's our website, personalpowermastery.co. You'll also find there that there's a lot of links to various social media things that we do and a lot of free resources that will give you an opportunity to kind of see who we are and try some stuff out. Also, a lot of times in those free resources, I bring some of these top achievers that I interviewed in to share their direct insights into success. So, for example, we just did a really cool video with Brian Smith, the founder of UGG Boots, and he shares some of his insights into entrepreneurial success and personal success business-wise. So if you go to personalpowermastery.co, you'll find many of those tools. And then, like I said, through social media, on Facebook, we've got a group that's there. On YouTube, there's materials. On Instagram, there's materials. And you can find a lot of that through that official website, but also even by just typing in my name, you'll come up with a lot of it.
A lot of information. Well, Douglas, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. It has been a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Personal Power Mastery. Again, if you'd like to connect with Doug, you can at his website, which is also douglasvermeeren.com. We'll have the link below. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.